That's the country song, right? Remember when?
Thank you.
Jacob Bigelow.
Yeah. Whenever my open is concocted, throw that in there.
He's on fire!
Jacob Bigelow, Huskers Illustrated, on the Connor Happer Show, on 1620, The Zone.
Boom shakalaka!
Jacob Bigelow joins us on the Connor Happer Show. Austin in for Happer today, 1620 The Zone. Jacob, how are you doing? And do you have any more fashion advice for the coaching staff that we saw today from the Nebraska football media?
I'm doing well, Austin. Good to be here. Good to talk with you. But no, I'm not handing out any more fashion tips, at least not in very sarcastic all caps like that tweet. But that's interesting. You know, the spread of the color yellow in Lincoln. It's everywhere now. You can't escape it, I guess, if you're coming to the podium for your availability.
Yeah, apparently something else is going on in the world because we've got yellow sleeves on Tony White on the undershirt with a black shirt over top. We had a yellow hat last week. We're losing everything. We're losing it all. So while we talk Husker football, let's stay on there. We did hear from Tony White earlier today with Husker football media availability. Wanted to gauge your thoughts. The big conversation last year was that the defense was going to be ready in the 3-3-5, but the Big Ten and the Husker opponents might not be. Do you think that offenses this season will be better equipped or better ready to attack Tony White's 3-3-5 defense?
I mean, you'd think so, right? I mean, there's a year worth of tape of Nebraska running the 3-3-5, and spoiler alert, a lot of the same personnel being on the field for to run the 3-3-5 that you'll see this coming year. You'd think that after whether you were on the schedule last year or you're you didn't see Nebraska last year, you're on the schedule this coming season. You've got 12 games worth of tape on it from last year, so you'd think there'd be a little less surprise, planning to game plan the week before or on the day of the game. Well, you'd think that coaching staffs would be a little more familiar with the scheme.
With the defense as well, there's been a lot of conversation. We made the joke earlier today on the show that we talk so much about, you give your one-off question about the defense, you assume they're great, then the offense is the primary focus. But I have concern with the Husker linebackers and defensive backs, just namely because there's a lot of transition there, especially with the linebackers. Which unit do you think is better equipped to maybe make that step up quickly at the start of the season? Is it the linebackers or the defensive backs?
That's a good question, Austin, because I have concern with both those areas as well. That's kind of where I've not necessarily pushed back on people who kind of just assume defense was good last year, everybody's back, they're going to be good again. Like, I'm not trying to rain on anybody's parade, but you could make an argument that the guys that are back at the linebacker spot, maybe overachieved last year at some point from what we saw. But I mean, it all comes down to your perception, right? I think there's more bodies in the defensive back room. I forget the exact number, but it's pretty staggering. So that may be where I lean in towards of which group is likely to stand out more so early on, just because there's more bodies. There's plenty of guys there, and a lot of guys we haven't seen who outside of Hill and Hartzog and trying to think of one other name, but there's a lot of guys we haven't seen, but I mean there's plenty more options I think that could get on the field and make a splash either in a play or over a game or two.
There's been so much talk on the offensive side about who's the impact freshman outside of Dylan Raiola, if it's going to be maybe an offensive lineman that steps up or maybe a running back or receiver that can make a big difference. What about on the defensive side? Is there a freshman that was maybe attending homecoming a year ago that is going to make a bigger impact than what we are thinking about right now in August?
Yeah, I don't know about freshmen. There's definitely a couple sophomores that I've got my eye on. They've got one of them talking to the media right now in Princeville, Mommy Ellen. And then you think about, I definitely have some stock in him. Some guys like Cam Lenhart, that are going into their sophomore years. That's more so where I have my eyes on guys who aren't maybe headliners that could make a splash on the defensive side.
Talking about Cam Lenhart too, he was kind of the premier guy, and Princewell also fit into that mark. But am I wrong in thinking that narrative has changed a little bit? It feels like Princewell is getting a little bit more of the attention and love than maybe Cam is at this point in the offseason.
Maybe a little bit. I feel like most of the the positive buzz on the defense is on that line. Obviously you've got the two big guys in the middle, and everything. You know what you're going to get with those guys. But at the edge spots too. There's a lot of positive buzz. But I've kind of been waiting these last couple of weeks to either hear from Princewell or Cam. After how well they played, during their spurts, last year. But I feel like, especially with him being at the podium today, Princewell is maybe getting a little more of that spotlight. But I don't think that means Cam Lenhart's been forgotten about by any means.
Husker defenses over the years and over the past generations and iterations of the best black shirts feel like they always have maybe that one piece of the puzzle that doesn't necessarily fit in with a traditional defense. You think of like Eric Hagg, Isaac Gifford has somewhat fit that role previously. Is it still Gifford, or is there somebody else that's still being like molded into the defense that kind of fits a bunch of different positions for Tony White?
I think Gifford, it's probably still Gifford. He's kind of, I don't want to say he's the mascot for what they want the defense to be, but obviously he went to media days. Obviously his mantra and how he goes about his business, kind of exactly what both Matt Rule and Tony White are looking for, like mantra persona wise with guys on that side of the ball, and I think he's shown it on the field too. So he's probably the leading candidate to get top billing for that role, but. I think, like it comes back to, what I alluded to earlier with the amount of bodies and just, and how they recruit just guys based on their intangibles and their athleticism. That doesn't mean there aren't, other candidates who could, be in that role either this year or, going into next year or down the line. That's just kind of how, it's a testament to how Rule and that staff recruits. They're just recruiting guys based on measurables, track times, things like that. And, they see things they like, and then they get them to Lincoln, and hopefully they can mold them into something more. But in terms of that role on this year's group, it's hard to not say it's
Jacob Bigelow of Huskers Illustrated joining us today on the Connor Happer Show with 1620 The Zone. Let's talk about the offense. We have to. It's part of the quota with talking offseason Huskers. Jamal Banks and IGC were big, prominent features of the last Chasing 3 documentary episode. Jamal Banks feels like he is going to be maybe that shoe-in for number one receiver. Can he be a difference maker when it comes to maybe transitioning Dylan Raiola, getting Heinrich Haarberg more comfortable? What is his biggest attribute that he can lend to the Huskers for the upcoming season?
No, I think he definitely can be a difference maker. Just based on the experience he has at Wake Forest. And this goes for IGC too. They're definitely the old heads, in that receiver room. And, like Anthony Edwards said on his Instagram post for Team USA, you got to keep some old heads around you, right? And with the young guys, in that room, the Jalen Boyd, Malachi Coleman's, Carter Nelson in his true freshman season, the experience that guys like those two, Isaiah Nayor, have at their previous stops. That can be important, not just for the young quarterbacks like Dylan Raiola, but for the younger guys in that receiver room too. And just with the way Banks is built, and I think Nebraska. He's not like the biggest body. Obviously he's not. I'm not going to say he's Maurice Purify, but I think he can be a difference maker. And I think there hasn't been a Nebraska receiver to come in from another power conference spot who's has the experience under his belt that Banks has, and is kind of. He's proven and at the power. Words can be hard sometimes at the power conference level, and I think he's going to be a difference maker for that room and for his quarterback.
You mentioned the experience portion of it. Obviously, a lot of people would point to Trey Palmer's year. He didn't come in with as much experience, but connected immediately with Casey Thompson. Is it a priority for the Husker offensive coaching staff, maybe Garrett McGuire, Marcus Satterfield, Glenn Thomas, them working together, that Raiola has a number one guy, or are they going with the committee when it comes to who's catching passes and building trust with the young freshman?
I mean, I'd expect it to be more of a committee, but I mean, obviously, one guy is probably going to rise above the rest. In terms of being like the on whether it's the depth chart, or the stat sheet, and they'll be the clear cut wide receiver one, and that's where I think Banks will end up. But I think with the pro style offense, I mean, I don't think it's going to be heavy on just one guy, and just like I think there's a lot of bodies in that room. It's a deep group, and you've got guys from who are at different points of their careers, but are different builds, different. I mean, there's plenty of options in that room, and I think that more lends itself to being a by committee approach.
All right, so enough Husker football talk. I wanted to put a bow with you, our USA basketball expert, and talk a little bit about the gold medal won and what to expect. To start with that, we had an argument on Friday's show. Is Steph Curry the greatest showman in sports? What he did in France against France themselves or Serbia, both were excellent performances. But do you see him as maybe that upper echelon athlete that everyone is buying tickets to go into, the greatest showman in sports?
I don't know about the greatest, but he's definitely up there. I mean, the showmanship from Steph, even, I mean, he's 36 now? He's 35 or 36, I think, and he's still, doing the night, celebration after hitting the last victory in the gold medal game. That man had a hoodie that said night in French at the ready to take pictures with his gold medal and party with the team afterwards, while wearing it. I think he definitely, has a case. And I think, when the Warriors are, on the road, there are still people who are going out of their way to, buy tickets just to see, the Steph Curry show, even in, the later years of his career. And, the impact that he's had on basketball in this country. I mean, I know as corny and cliche as it may sound, people will still say that, Steph Curry taught America that 3 is worth more than 2, taught a whole generation of kids, that 3 is worth more than 2. And, it's still crazy to me that that was his first and probably I'd say definitely going to be his only Olympics. And he, made the most of the opportunity and put on a pretty good show in the final 2 games for Team USA.
And putting on your cap into 2028, we're all a little bit older, moving a little bit slower, but there will be some significant faces that may not be a part of Team USA for the United States version of the Olympics. Do you think we will see Kevin Durant again? Probably no LeBron, likely no Steph. Who do you think that next round of stars and starting 5 will look like when we see Team USA back in Los Angeles?
Yeah, I think this past couple of weeks was definitely the Olympic stage farewell for KD and LeBron, and I think and Steph too. So, and even though Steph only played in 1 Olympics, but obviously next up you look at guys that were on this team like Anthony Edwards and Devin Booker, and there's a big question mark around Jason Tatum for sure, but Bam Adebayo, and then there's some guys the next group that were either in the that were definitely considered for training camp, that are kind of on the way up. I think Chet Holmgren will likely, be a part of this group in 2028 if he continues on the trajectory that he's on. I think that if Joel Embiid doesn't decide to play for Team USA, maybe Chet gets the call as the second, as the next big man on this group too. After the year he had in Oklahoma City. There's a lot of guards and wings, that are out there, and it's the perfect position to be a part of the group. But those are the first names that come to mind.
Last question for you. Going back to Nebraska, obviously head coach for baseball, Will Bolds, received a contract extension all the way through 2029. How does that elevate the expectation of where the program is right now? When your head coach gets a new deal, gets more money, it feels like that increases. Is there maybe a talk or a discussion as to this is the next step that Coach Bolt needs to take the Huskers?
There might be. I mean, I think after this year, this past season, the extension was pretty well deserved. Through the 40-win season for the first time in a while. The first Big Ten tournament title since joining the conference. Obviously the ending of it down in Stillwater was not what some folks had hoped, but it was kind of kind of served as a reminder to, I think the program and the diehard Nebraska baseball fans, like, oh, this program can still, do this. They obviously people long for, the early 2000s and the feeling that came with all of that. But, to, win the conference and get back to the postseason, it was definitely a reassurance of, oh, this program can still do this, can still get to this point. And now this, contract extension probably gives Will Bolt, like, hey, you got to that point. Can you take the next step? And obviously, if you're going to, be the coach until 2029, that gives you a little bit of, gives you a few more years, and you're going to be, the second highest paid coach in the conference, for the time being. So, the resources are there, and they're obviously Troy Dannon is a fan of what they're doing over at Hawks Field. So it'll be interesting to see, going into next year and beyond for Will Bolt.
Jacob Bigelow joining us today. Always appreciate your time and your insight, and looking forward to chatting with you again next time. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And have a great rest of your day, all right?
Yeah, thanks, Austin. Same to you, man. Have a good rest of the show.